All right, welcome everybody to the Lakers Legacy Podcast, where welcome to the start of the Lakers' 78th season in franchise history as the quest for 18 continues. And the quest for 18 begins with obsession. These are my obsessions. Just when I thought I said all I can say, my chick on the side said.
You got one on the way.
Nice. Anyway, cheesy banner phrases aside, ball up because the 2025-26 Lakers season is finally here. I'm your host, Jonathan Hernandez, and not only are the Lakers back, but my co-host, Tommy Alexander, is back as well. T-Pain, welcome back to the show. How was your sabbatical and how was paternity life the past 2 months? Did you gain 20 pounds like Jackson Hayes, but in a different way?
I actually lost a little bit of weight because I don't have
Oh,
time to eat
nice.
anymore. But it's no, it's all been good. Very tired. I I don't know that I'm probably less tired, I think, than I was the first time. The first time it's like such a shock. The second time it like everything takes more time, but you're more prepared for it mentally. So I don't know. It wasn't as much of a shock to my system, I think. But anyway, yeah, it's all been great, but a lot of work.
And just for context, Tommy just had his second son, so that's what we're talking about. But now he's back, and we're here to talk about the Lakers media day. Tommy, new theme for the season is obsession. Yeah, cool. I guess it's better than a champion chip with like the chip with a photo of the trophy. I forgot what year that was, but
Or what was it like
apparently,
during it was some like nonsense, like kind of pseudo Warriors phrase for the playoffs, like focus joy or something
yeah,
like that.
focus, unleash joy, something
Unleash
weird like
joy.
that was for the
Like
playoffs, but I think for one of the like other start of the season slogans, it was like chip on your shoulder, but also champion chip. And then this one, and then they had like the I be a trophy or something in chip, and like this one, they also did something lame where like the I and the O are like number 18, like in obsessions, like
uh
the 18th championship. Anyways, regardless, we are here. Lakers basketball is back. Start of the 2025-26 NBA season. Tommy, let's start here. So I'll give a quick rundown of the show agenda. We will give our thoughts and impressions on media day yesterday, and then we shall talk to Tommy and get a recap of what he thought of the offseason because obviously we haven't gotten any of his takes. I've gotten them via text on the side, but we'll get his actual takes on the offseason and what he feels about this team heading into the season. And then we've got a big announcement at the end of the show, so stay tuned for that. But first, Tommy, any like random visual observances that you saw that stood out to you? As I mentioned at the top of the show, obviously Jackson Hayes gained 20 pounds and it showed up even though he was wearing this baggy white undershirt. You know it showed up because the white undershirt wasn't so baggy and it was kind of tight. So Jackson Hayes gained 20 pounds. Austin Reeves definitely bulked up, although it was kind of hard to see in certain angles because of his farmer's tan. Anything else that stood out to you visually from what you saw from the players?
Visually it appeared that everybody's in good shape. I mean, I feel like we say that every year. So it's hard to tell until they get on the floor and start running around. But yeah, I mean, Jackson Hayes, that was like a very welcome surprise from my perspective because it's been mostly quiet on the Jackson Hayes front, I feel like this summer. And so it's been sort of nice to, in the back of my mind, I feel like Jackson Hayes is a really good example of somebody who was probably he gets too much flack for how good he actually is. I mean, he is a totally
Mhm.
serviceable backup center who is just thrust into a starting role on a championship team against like a multi-time defensive player of the year. I mean, like an obviously top tier starting center. So, how things ended for him last year, I feel like do a disservice to how good he was over the course of the season. But
Yeah.
anyway, seeing him bulk up was a huge I mean, I thought that was a big deal because in the back of your mind, you just sort of write it off as like, I don't know, does he give you that much of a different look compared to Aiton? I think he does now. I mean, it's like we are like loading two very, very strong guys who are legitimate 7 footers. And we have not had that in a very long, I mean, at least like 5, 6 years since the championship season, probably, or maybe the year after too with Gasol. But um, So that was good. I mean, everybody else, like you said, you pretty much ran through everybody who's lost weight. Looks appears to be in good shape, gained weight, lost weight, whatever. But also, JJ Redick seems a little less manic this year, which is probably better for us. He's still kind of doing his like, I'm an obsessed basketball freak like persona thing.
Obsessions.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's like a little bit off-putting. But he's a little bit he's putting that on a little bit less. He's putting on his like I'm a jerk because I'm so smart. You people don't understand my genius. Like he's putting that persona aside a little bit, which I think is helpful, and it just sort of leads to this overall view of like it. Every year everyone's optimistic about the season, but this year it feels like people are optimistic for the right reasons.
Mhm.
And I think that's all good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I'm a jerk. I'm a jerk. That's JJ Redick's. I don't know why I want to sing like everything I say today. Anyways, also, doesn't it seem like Rui gets slimmer and slimmer every offseason or something? He like really wants to buy into playing the three or whatever. Rui looks super fit. Obviously, Luka Doncic coming off of the great Eurobasket run that he had. And yellow is not a very, and I'm wearing yellow right now, ironically. It's not a very, what's it called? It's not, what am I saying? It's not good for people who aren't necessarily slim, but like Luca, the definition in his muscles, like yesterday, that was the most like, most pronounced that I've seen him. It kind of really shows off like how much work he did on his body. In certain angles you can't tell, but there was this one shot, and I posted it on X where I was like, oh, okay, he looks like cut, which is really like nice to see. And obviously we saw that on the court during Eurobasket. Adu Thiero looks like a huge slab of rock. That
Yeah,
dude is
he does not look
super
like a
built.
rookie, except
No,
for
he
his
looks
face. His face looks like a rookie.
yeah. He looks like a 6'8" running back out there. Unfortunately, his knee also looks like the size of his biceps right now, so that's a bit of a problem because apparently he's dealing with a knee swelling. But hopefully he can round the corner and we can eventually see him on the court because that'll be super fun to watch someone that huge and sturdy and bulky also be able to lift up for 43 inches off the ground and be that athletic as well and aerial. But yeah, outside of that, I think everyone seems relatively healthy and ready to go outside of Thiero and Marcus Smart, who's apparently dealing with some knee tendinopathy, but he should be ready to go next week. And then they held LeBron out today just out of an abundance of caution in his year 23 season. And perfect segue. Tommy, let's talk about LeBron James because I know heading into Media Day, at least on my end, he was like the biggest question mark for me because this is the first time we've actually heard him all offseason outside of him. I guess first time we've heard him talk about basketball and specifically the Lakers. And for me, I was always like, I just don't know what LeBron's mentality and mindset is coming into this year. Like, is he just literally 1 foot in, 1 foot out, the 1 foot out? Like, does he have 1 foot out the door this entire season? Like, is he going to be mentally checked out? He doesn't have a true homie on his team. His best friend on the team is probably the coach, which is super awkward. Is he sick and tired of his own son being on the team after 1 year? Like, I just didn't know where LeBron stood. And then yesterday, to see him kind of just, and maybe this doesn't come as too much of a surprise for others, but like to see him just like snap back into place, like nothing ever happened, like his best friend never got traded. He was all smiles on Media Day and joking around and everything. He looked locked in. And then the biggest difference, and we talked about this on text, but LeBron actually looks lighter. He
Yeah.
looks different. He looks freer. It looks like there's a weight off of his shoulders and almost in a like roundabout, like counterintuitive way, him not being the guy anymore. Whereas initially I thought him not being the guy and him not having such a vocal like presence on the entire locker room, whereas every single season of his career, he has always been the ringleader. He was the tone setter. He was the joke setter of the chemistry and vibe of the locker room. I thought that would be sort of like an awkward thing for him coming into this season. But instead, I'm kind of like, I think LeBron kind of likes this new setup where it just feels like, and maybe I'm reading into this, but it feels like there's a weight off of his shoulders and there's like he's unburdened by the expectation of having to carry the whole show. And I think where the Lakers stand to benefit from that is LeBron can kind of just show up and focus on basketball for the first time. Whereas last year, even though like the last few seasons he's been saying like, oh, AD is the main guy, AD is the main guy. Even with AD still here, we all knew that
Yeah.
even if AD is the guy on the basketball court, LeBron is still the president. He's still the spokesperson in the face, no matter what. And so this year is the first time it's tangibly, hey, everything Luka. And it seems like LeBron is like legitimately okay with that because he can kind of have his vacations, have time with his wife, just chill. But when it's time to strap things up on the basketball court, he'll focus on basketball. But thank God he doesn't have to do all these other things. So just your thoughts on that and LeBron all of a sudden kind of just looking freer and lighter. It's kind of like that senioritis thing, but not in the sense that he's checked out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that point you made about AD is really important. I mean, for the last 3, 4 years, or I guess I should say the last 3, 4 media days, and during those seasons too, LeBron was number one leading the camp and leading the charge with this notion that AD is the leader of the team, AD is the face of the team. He was the number one guy being like, I want other guys to handle the ball so I could play off the ball. He was, one of the main people rationalizing the decision to have like both Austin and D'Lo to start the season last year as like more ball handlers and, embrace sort of like taking some of that burden off of him. Sort of notwithstanding, media or online narratives, it has always felt, in recent years that LeBron was sort of looking for a change like this. The fact that he is super reinvigorated by all of this Luka stuff is not that surprising to me. I mean, last season, I think we saw a glimpse of it around the time the trade was made, but you're sort of in the middle of a season and there's just a lot of things going on. I think now with time to sort of sit on it, it's sort of like, you could sort of just like, we kind of lose perspective sometimes that these are people, right? If you were doing the same job for 23 years, any little thing, or 21 years, I forget, I'm losing track of how many years he's been playing basketball.
2023.
Any little thing that you change, could renew that excitement. I mean, even if you don't are not working, right? And so I think like LeBron is experiencing a lot of this for the first time, probably in his career, certainly in a long time, where it's like, I am going into the season not expecting to be the guy, again, because like you said, notwithstanding what he was saying about AD, who was going to pass the ball to AD? It had to be him, right? Who was going to be running all of the non-AD offense? It had to be him. Being able to coming into the season knowing that you have not just an adequate ball handler, but like a ball handler who's probably better than you at this stage in their career and is one of the greatest passers in NBA history at the age of 26. One of the greatest in terms of ability to put the entire team on his shoulders and carry them that we've seen in NBA history at the age of 26. I mean, he was doing it when he was 21, right? So it's like, this is not just like LeBron has a good teammate now. It's like LeBron has one of the best teammates if he keeps up what he's done so far, which we haven't seen anything suggesting he won't. LeBron has one of the best teammates in NBA history on his team in his prime, or even before his prime, who can carry all that burden. And yeah, you can see it in his face. He's just like, and you can see it in his responses. Like, what do you do? I practice catching and shooting because that's what I'm going to be doing. Like, it's, and I know he's said stuff like this in prior seasons, but it just, everything about it felt a lot more real because we're coming into this season. Last season we had the benefit of continuity with our roster, but we had an entirely new coaching staff and everything affiliated, with the staff, analytics, all these other new hires, right? Now we are coming back into this season with essentially the same coaching staff, similar principles, I'm sure, as what we did last year, more experience, very substantially, the core of our roster is substantially unchanged. The way we're going to play is not going to be that different than how we ended the season, except we get to like fully integrate Luka and everything he can do into that. So all of that excitement you could just sort of read on LeBron's face, and And I think it's exciting. The only awkwardness for him is probably like this is the first time in his career he's come into a season on an expiring contract where it wasn't necessarily his choice. And I'm not going to get into the narratives of whether Clutch asked for an extension or the Lakers didn't offer one or who. I don't really care. Maybe that was awkward for him, but if it was, he played it off well. And I think he knows that whether it's here or somewhere else, someone is going to give him a max contract next year if he wants to go one more year before he retires. And so anyway, yeah, I think all of this led to a sort of reinvigorated LeBron.
Yeah, I think it's like two pronged. You mentioned the basketball side of things, and I mentioned sort of the limelight side of things, where he can sort of, hey, you want to talk to Luca? I get it. He's the future, so go ahead and do that. I'm totally fine with it, you know. And I think it's almost like that. What do you call it? You know, when you mentioned, working at a certain job for so long and doing the same things over and over again. I feel like just naturally people get reinvigorated when they know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Like there's
Yeah.
literally it's gonna end soon, and I feel that from LeBron for the first time, and it's even making me as a fan kind of, oh shoot, this might be it. Appreciate him more. So yeah, everything I saw from LeBron kind of flipped my perception of where I thought this season was gonna go, and I saw another side of like, oh, here is not only the silver lining, but maybe the benefit of LeBron's situation, being on this expiring contract, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, not having this be his team. Like, I never considered that LeBron might actually like it at this stage of his career, you know? So, why don't we take it to break here? When we return, let's get into some other tidbits and things that stood out to us from certain players from Media Day. All right, so we are back. So we were talking about LeBron before we took it to break. We're talking about how he used to have AD. Well, from AD to now DeAndre Ayton, kind of like a opposite flip of the spectrum here. DeAndre Ayton, probably the most mercurial player that we signed this offseason. Mercurial, but talented. And so what are your thoughts before we kind of ping pong on all the random other things that stood out to us? I just wanted to make sure that we touched on DeAndre. What are your thoughts on DeAndre? Because, couple months ago when we were tossing around crazy trade ideas, we'd always bring up DeAndre Ayton's name and kind of snicker in the background because it was almost like a meme joke. Like we knew what he could do, we knew he put up numbers, but there was always a question about his motivation, his commitment to the game, et cetera, et cetera. And then you hear him yesterday, and I guess I haven't watched a lot of DeAndre Ayton interviews, and from the stuff that I've seen from DeAndre, he just seems like a goofy, fun dude. But he was very serious, very articulate, and sort of introspective about his answers. And I felt like he ingratiated himself probably better than anyone else on the Lakers during Media Day out of any of the new guys. He said all the right things. Now I understand that he has to. He's on a contract year. His reputation is kind of in the tank. But I think what stood out to me was just like how humble he was in what he was saying. And then on top of that, I actually buy how it genuinely seems like he's honored to play for the Lakers. And I mean, he grew up in San Diego, so I'm sure he was a Lakers fan growing up, but it seems like he understands the opportunity in front of him, and it seems like he wants to make good on maybe those lost years with Portland and the tail end of the Phoenix Suns years where he kind of lost the script a little bit in terms of, not being as motivated on a consistent night-to-night basis. But yeah, what are your thoughts on DeAndre Ayton?
Yeah, I think with Aiden, the question with him has always been mental. It was never talent. I mean, he's very talented, even when he's loafing around out there, or like what it appears to be loafing around out there. Offensively and defensively, his analytics look amazing. And so like it was always more of like a mental thing with him. Can he take the next step? Can he sort of, I don't know, take the games more seriously? I hate to say that because I can't get inside this guy's head and know for sure that he was not taking it seriously. But those were sort of the knocks on him. I think you can fake answers. I think you can only fake answers to a certain degree. At some point, what you really think is going to come out. And I just think that, yeah, it's media day. Yeah, it's the most optimistic day of the entire season. But the things that DeAndre was saying were the right things. He is, I mean, like, look, he's not an idiot. He's got an agent who's advising him. He has eyes. He can see around the league. there are fringe backup center, I mean, fringe starters slash backup centers who are getting like $20 million. I mean, like Daniel Gafford signed a $20 million per year deal with many multiple years guaranteed. Jakob Pertl is like at about 20 million, or maybe over 20 million with his, I think he signed an extension too. And so it's like,
Mhm.
you have these guys, and those aren't bad players, but like, again, looking at the analytics, DeAndre Ayton on both ends of the court is right up there, if not better than any of these other options who are getting $20+ million deals. And so he's got to know, he's like, what, 26 years old? His centers are back in vogue in the NBA. And next summer is his best chance. There are teams with cap space. The Lakers will have cap space, plus his early bird rights. There will be, or I guess not early bird rights. They'll have his like whatever they call it after 1 year. They'll have some
Non-bird.
sort of limited rights to retain him, but most importantly, they have cap space. So this is his chance to go out and like convince somebody about his abilities and get his final payday. Now, those motivations may be totally aligned with the team motivations, and those are the situations that you sort of like to look out for. Like it's like the Dwight Howard, right? When he came back, it was a minimum contract and he wanted to add a championship to his resume. He wanted to sort of renew his reputation around the league. There were clear motivations that sort of aligned with the Lakers' goal of winning a championship. And I think you sort of see that same alignment with Ayton here. And hopefully it works out. The thing I like is like, it's not like he wasn't just solely focused on how much individually, like, oh, his scoring for me is going to be so easy. He did mention the fact that like, he's had exposure playing with good playmakers and he knows how much you know, that would help him. But a lot of his motivation seemed sort of oriented, or the way he framed it at least seemed oriented around team success,
Mhm.
which I think is really, really important. And probably, again, if he has a smart agent who's advising him, if you're a starting center on a team that makes a playoff run and you put up decent numbers yourself, you're going to get paid. Daniel Gafford is just putting up rebounding and blocks and is making $20 million a year, and he can dunk, right? So it's like, and, he could finish around the rim. So there are paths to get paid that don't involve you putting up 25 and 10. And if he recognizes that truly, I think he's going to have a very, very good season because the
Mhm.
points are just going to come without him even trying. I mean, the output that he put up in Portland last year, I would be shocked if he doesn't match that, at minimum this year with Luka and
Oh, easy.
LeBron. Easy, right? And it's like, he's going to be getting a lot off of putbacks. He's going to be getting two-man game is just one small component of how easy his life is going to be. So yeah, it was exciting. It was really nice to hear him speak up. Because sort of like you, I had heard the same things, but or sort of had similar impressions of him. But he was sort of, it was like confident but humble. And I think
Mhm.
that it was like the right tone. And again, these are all words for now, but the mindset seemed to be in the right place. And so I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, and I feel like he went beyond the surface level, like coffee mug quotables, even though he did have a coffee mug quotable when he was like, pressure is privilege. But
Yeah.
it seemed like he waxed the right poetic about the franchise and really understanding like the legacy that he's stepping into and willing to embrace those expectations, So I really like that. It's like, hey, I'm an $8 million player. My reputation is shot, but I'm willing to like every day try and make a stamp on this storied franchise's legacies, which is what I like to hear, which is really cool.
And he also had I like the self-awareness to sort of be like, I need to be in a high pressure situation to motivate myself. You know,
Yeah.
someone could look at that as like a character flaw. I think that's good self-awareness. If you need to be
Yep.
playing in high pressure situations to elevate yourself to your max ability, that's good to admit. It's not
Yeah.
a lot of guys, it's not like, and then what you don't like is the opposite motivation. And Austin and others have had quotes on this front. You don't want somebody who's just motivated by touches and putting up their own individual stats. And I don't necessarily, I didn't hear anything from Aiton in the media day interviews that suggested that.
No, he was talking about like screening a lot, screening for Luca. What's crazy? DeAndre Ayton, believe it or not, has never averaged 19 points in his NBA career. It just seems like it would be such a natural thing for him. And despite all the things he said about doing tertiary, supplementary things to help his team succeed, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the first year he averages 19 just off of transition buckets and lobs. So we shall see. So far, so good with DeAndre. I think to stick on the point of like this being a prove it year for him, I think the one thing that stood out to me and one thing that I actually realized hearing even guys like Rui and Austin talk was that this we have a lot for better or for worse, but I think maybe probably for better. We have a lot of potential last stand dudes on this roster around Luka Doncic, which includes LeBron James. We've got DeAndre Ayton and Marcus Smart on player options, but they're on cheap player options, so they're both probably going to look for more next season, so they want to do well. We've got AR on an expiring deal, looking to follow up his career 20.6 assists season. We've got Rui Hachimura on an expiring deal, looking to follow up his stellar shooting percentages from last season and a great playoff series. We've got Jackson Hayes on an expiring contract. Everyone has a lot to prove, and everyone seems to understand that their best shot at not only extending their career with the Lakers, but extending their career in the NBA falls on they need to make a run now. And so obviously there's a downside to that where if things go haywire quickly, then individuals start doing whatever they want to. But around Luka Doncic, I feel like that's not going to happen. There's like a floor baseline that will always hit. And because of that, I feel like everything should be culminating in this like positive sense with regards to these potential last stand dudes. But yeah, with that said, are there anything else that stood out to you from any of the other new guys, any of the old guys, any specific quote from Media Day yesterday?
The constant focus on Austin's physical improvements this summer, I think, are encouraging. We've heard this stuff in the past. It feels like the past few years, there's always been some sort of excuse, right? It was like, oh, that one year, yeah, he played in that Olympics qualifying tournament and he was burnt out from all that play. And then the following year it was something else. And I was like, he was playing too much golf. And it's like it's like his role is unclear, changing coach. I think last year, if when you take a step back and look at his season, it's actually more impressive than I recall watching it. I mean, for to average 20 and 6 on a team with LeBron and AD, who were both mostly healthy for the first half of the season. And then second half of the season, LeBron and Luca, who were again mostly healthy for that part of the season. You
Yeah.
put up 20 and 6 as like a true third option. And by at least by the analytics, he was not good defensively, but he improved from the prior season. That was a really good season. You could think that somebody would take a season like that and go back and say, okay, I'm just going to keep doing that, but better. And that, a lot of people do that. But I mean, it's hard with these weight numbers because you just don't know. What exactly is when the last time the numbers were updated. Like, as one example here, like Luca's weight actually went up from his listed weight last year because his listed weight last year was 230 and the Mavericks had just never updated his listed weight since his rookie season. And so like, obviously he did not gain 14 pounds, but he's now listed at 244. So like I don't know, but if you believe the Lakers numbers last year and this year, he gained like 15 pounds of muscle in the offseason. Uh, to the extent that helps him with defense, I mean, you figure it probably would. To the extent it helps him not be a complete liability, those are huge factors. I mean, Austin, we're going to have to make a decision on him, and it's a tough decision because we're sort of cornered. And his agent probably realizes this. We need him as at least at the very least as an asset. And so LeBron might retire after next season. Who's the next guy? If Austin last year had a top 50 season, if he improves to being like your top 30, top 40, top 30 season, like you're almost sniffing like an all-star team, like that type. I'm not saying he will this year because I highly doubt he will, but if you're sort of like putting that output out, plus you can play defense, I just don't see a reason where we would, or a world where we wouldn't extend him. And so, hearing that he's focused on the right things and not just like, how am I going to continue expanding my bag? Because that was sort of like the issue I had with Austin, or not even Austin himself. The language around Austin last season was a lot of JJ talking about like, oh, he's shown us this and he's shown us that, but we think there's more. And look, they were right, by the way. JJ and the coaching staff was right.
Mhm.
I probably underestimated Austin. He did have more to show, and he did show it last year, and he really elevated in a lot of areas. And it was all very offensive minded. And I think that like now that it's become clear that he needs to elevate himself defensively if he wants to be a long term starter next to Luka in the backcourt, I'm really, really curious to see if there are like evolutions in his game in that respect. Like, I mean, I'm optimistic. Austin is like, a competitor. He's really into golf, which is a very meticulous sport, for those who are into it. And so I have no doubts that like he knows what his deficiencies are, and is focused on addressing those and not just focused on the numbers that are on the stat sheet at the end of the game. So I'm optimistic, and I think it's a very, very encouraging sign that he's bulked up and is more of like a true like second guard, not just like a, sort of pseudo point guard.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad Austin kind of adjusted the sliders back to, okay, I know what I can do offensively and I'm going to continue to grow, but what I can do is work on my body. It seems like him and a lot of other people were tired of getting punked by these physical, explosive teams like the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they really took that to heart this offseason. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see what Austin can do this season as well, because that bulk is not only going to help him on the defensive end, but the offensive end as well. When he like knifes into the paint and like instead of getting stripped and hitting a brick wall, maybe he can, force the issue a little bit. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Marcus Smart, because as odd as it is to see a lifelong Celtic in purple and gold, at the same time, it also kind of feels right in a weird way. And the way that he talks, it feels like Marcus Smart has always been a Laker for some reason, or at least he's always wanted to be a Laker. I don't actually know his fan history, but like whatever's going on with Marcus Smart this season and suddenly becoming a Laker, it just all kind of makes sense. And I really like his like cold killer, very professional, super savvy vet role that he's now taken on. And yeah, I just hope he can stay healthy is the biggest thing. And then there was also a lot of lots of secondhand Jake LaRavia praise. Lots of secondhand unprompted Jake LaRavia praise. So I hope he can live up to the hype from even his own teammates heralding him as this sort of like hipster pick that nobody's talking about. So excited to see Jake LaRavia step up to the plate. Jake from Pasadena, to show us what he's really got. And with that said, Tommy, really quickly to close this show, is a good way to like wrap everything up for Media Day. Yeah, what are your thoughts on what the Lakers did? And I don't want to relitigate the offseason, but you can just kind of talk about the team as a whole. And I guess coming into July, I know what your expectations were. They were pretty it's not limited, but you had pretty low expectations, naturally so, conservative, because who's going to expect DeAndre Ayton and Marcus Smart and all this stuff? And it started off pretty conservatively with Jake LaRavia. We're like, okay, well, that's kind of interesting. He's 23 years old. But yeah, what are your thoughts on what the Lakers did this offseason, and then how does that wrap around to how you feel about the team, having seen them in Media Day and into, we're going to play on Friday, which is crazy.
That is crazy. I think the team like wildly exceeded my expectations. Again, my expectations were very low given like the list of free agents and the resources we had available. Once it became clear that no unexpected sign and trade type players would emerge, once it became clear that LeBron wasn't going to take a pay cut because he opted in, I was like, okay. I mean, I recall me and you having these conversations, like, well before I went out on my paternity leave, but it was all sort of in the vein of like, well, if we're really just limited to the smaller MLE, and this was before DFS opted out too, but the smaller MLE and maybe the BAE and minimum contracts, like how are we going to, I mean, we have probably like 5 holes to fill. How are we going to fill it with those tools? And I think like,
With Jay Sean
losing.
Tate, Sims.
Yeah, exactly. We were like best case scenario, Jay Sean Tate. That's it, like that's like kind of where we came from, right? Um, and so yeah, so that was sort of like that was sort of what I expected. And then it's like in a way, I guess we got lucky, but I don't know. I don't know what's lucky in sports anymore, right? It's like people I feel like to throw that around to sort of downplay people's achievements, but was it lucky that Rob waited and didn't make a stupid move, or was that good like management? I don't know. Right, it's like maybe he was just being a good manager and understood what was available and what might potentially in the future become available and was waiting. I mean, for all the time we were waiting around, like, what's he doing? Like, oh no, DFS is opting out, this is a catastrophe. you know, DeAndre Ayton's agent is like the same as I'm forgetting if it's the same as Luca's or
As
Austin's, but
Luca.
yeah, so it's like you don't think we knew? I mean, we're in communication with this dude like every day probably because we're trying to get Luca re-signed. So like you don't think that that guy mentioned in passing, hey, the guy who needs to be marketing his guy for a new team, like, hey, by the way, Aiton might get bought out. It seems like you guys could use a center. Like, obviously, Rob probably heard about this at some point. He probably heard about it before DFS made the choice to opt out. So I don't know. I think that it's really, really easy to like sort of hand wave off what happened this summer as like good luck. Um, and just like right place, right time, and there was no actual skill involved. But I just think that's like a cop out. At the end of the day, Rob signed DeAndre Ayton, he signed Marcus Smart, and he signed Jake LaRavia, and we went into the offseason with like essentially no tools. The one thing he could have done that would have made me happy was dump Maxi Kleber, but we've all seen the costs of like dumping players, and it would have cost a first round pick to dump Maxi Kleber. So okay, shoot the guy. He wasn't able to pull that off for a reasonable price. But I mean, starting going back to the draft where we had a pick in the 50s and no other tradable draft assets, and he turned that and cash into like moving 20 spots up and basically getting a fringe first round talent when we had like no picks. Um, that was huge. Everything he did in free agency, I thought was good. I thought the Laravia thing was a very nice departure. It was like more of an upside play than what we've seen in the past with LeBron AD teams, which were a lot more like we're taking stability and guys who have proven it. And
I'm
I think
sorry.
there's
Before you go, the Laravia thing is what makes me think that Rob knew that DeAndre was going to get bought out, because there's no way you give Jake Laravia $6 million of the non-taxpayer MLE without knowing that you can get DeAndre Ayton for only 8. If you
yeah,
weren't
yeah,
sure
yeah.
about that, you wait for DeAndre and say, "Hey Jake, just hold on. We need to see what this dude is willing to sign for." So anyways, continue.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what you just said. And that's where I get offended a little bit at this notion that like, well, when it happens like, in this, if it happens in this way that I've predetermined, that's skill. If it happens in this way, that's just good luck. Anybody could have done that. And I just there's more strategy involved in being a general manager than just literally who are you signing among this list of current free agents. There's stuff that goes into it that like we don't fully understand because we're just fans looking at it from the outside. We don't fully understand everything that went into that DeAndre Ayton situation, and we never will, and because of that we're probably not going to be able to give Rob like the full credit he deserves, because I suspect there was a lot more than, oh, the Lakers fumbled the bag with DFS, and then they got lucky and fell ass backwards into Aiton and Laravia. I mean, we had heard about Laravia even before we even, heard that there was any inkling that DFS wouldn't be re-signed. The DFS not being re-signed things leak like the day and a half or 2 days before free agency started. At that point, even though Aiton hadn't been announced, there is no way that Aiton's agent didn't know at that point that Aiton was going to get bought out. There's just no way that he didn't know at that stage, right? So it's like, if he knew, maybe it's reasonable to infer that Rob knew. If Rob knew, maybe it's reasonable to infer that he strategized and planned his free agent attack or adjusted what he was going to do based on that information. Maybe all of a sudden after that, the offer to DFS looks a little bit different, right? And so we don't know. All we know is that DFS was offended by the offer that Rob gave him. We don't know what the offer was. Maybe it was like, we'll give you a 1 year deal at the minimum. Right. Like, oh, I don't know, we can't confirm to you day one of free agency you'll have access to the full MLE, or like we can't confirm that we can match your salary. We don't know how those conversations went, but he was probably approaching those conversations with the that he had potentially signed to replace DFS. So I just think that like in those situations, it's so hard to like you get in these arguments with people where they're suggesting that Rob gets no credit because these guys are unexpectedly became buyout options. And I think it's short-sighted. I think it's people who view general manager as like being a general manager is like each day is a vacuum, not like Rob has been the general manager for us since 2019, or I don't know what his title was back then, but like he's been a basketball executive for us since 2019 or before even 2017 maybe. And maybe it's a accumulation of all of his experiences and sort of like relationships and all of this stuff he's built up over the years to like that got him into the point. Yeah, literally the Luka trade with Niga, and like maybe all of that together is like put him in this situation to make these decisions. I mean, it's just like funny to me because nobody questions it when other teams do it, right? Like there have been other summers where teams went into it with no with nothing really to spend. And then they come out of it and it's like, oh, wow, they had nothing to spend. But the first day, they lined all these guys up. Like, we can't be so naive to think that like all of that happened in like 30 minutes of work. Oh, free agency just started and like this guy put in 30 minutes of work and and then this happened. It's like, this is like there are rules as we know from the Kawhi situation, but there are rules in the CBA around how free agency is supposed to work, but like that doesn't mean that like there are sort of other things happening that like the average fans wouldn't know about. That was my side rant about that, but all of this is a long way to say I think Rob did a great job this year.
And also, I'll just add, I visibly, tangibly remember there was a hot second where before we signed, well, after we signed DeAndre and we still had the taxpayer MLE to use, or actually the BAE, there's a hot second when fans were like, we should sign Precious Achua to the BAE.
Yeah.
What are we doing? And then we signed Marcus Smart, and it's like, oh, okay, but Rob got lucky. He didn't know Marcus Smart was. It doesn't matter if he didn't know Marcus Smart was gonna get bought out. He saved that for just like a better option than Precious Achua, because Precious Achua on this side, Chris Boucher on that side, he knows himself like these guys are gonna be waiting out there, and I don't think Precious Achua got signed till like last week, So these guys,
Right.
no matter how mediocre they are, and no matter how much we want, especially with the new Mark Walter ownership, like a more optimal GM and all that stuff, like these guys still have a better gauge of the market than we do. Like, period, hands down. So yeah, so Tommy, I said we wouldn't relitigate, but we did. But anyways, that all wraps around to we have probably the deepest, most balanced Lakers team that we've had heading into this season. And that's, to me, that's a very optimistic thing, because Rob said that we were going to be aggressive at the trade deadline. I mean, we kind of have to be because we have so many expirings, but we can be aggressive at this point, like modularly. We can be as like aggressive as we want to, or we can, it's like not, it's not like previous seasons where we knew like one player for sure had to, like a pretty pivotal player had to go out, like if things shake out right with this current roster, it's like not out of the realm of possibility where I would still want some sort of marginal trade to be done, but it's not out of the realm of possibility where it's like much of this same team is still here past the trade deadline and we just get like an extra wing, It could be as simple as that because everything's working out well, the chemistry is hitting, or it could be as big as like, oh, we're just missing one piece, but everything else is working, and we get like an Andrew Wiggins like bigger sort of deal, So I just like that it seems like we're heading into this season with more of our best foot forward than we ever have. Not ever have, but like in the most recent seasons, even with Anthony Davis and LeBron James. So, okay, to close this show, big announcement. Tommy, take the floor again. What are you going to announce to people?
I'm out. I sounded way too happy about that. No, I will be riding off into the sunset with respect to the Lakers Legacy podcast. Uh, it has been a great, amazing 10 years doing this. It feels crazy to say we've been doing this for 10 years, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's been an awesome 10 years. I think life and work and all this stuff has like finally caught up to me, and I just don't think I have the time to dedicate to this anymore. I mean, for anyone who's listened over the years, you all know I always say this, and I don't just say this to be nice. I actually, like, Jonathan does all the work on this podcast. I show up occasionally and give some ideas, but you know, he does everything, and this is really his show, and I feel very fortunate to have been part of the journey for the last 10 years. This was not something I ever thought in my life I would do when I was like 25 or however old I was when we started this, but um, it was really fun. I distinctly remember you reaching out to me about like the possibility of doing this when I was on my bar trip right after I had uh, graduated law school. I took the bar and then I went on a vacation in Europe for a few weeks. And I think like at the end of that trip, you reached out and kind of proposed this. And my initial thought was, no way in hell am I doing that. Because it did not seem like something that I would enjoy. Certainly at that stage of my life, I was not like the type of person to get on this type of thing and just start talking. But it's been so much more than I could have ever imagined, and it's just been, yeah, it's been a really fun ride. But unfortunately, my time is up, and the show will go on with Mr. Hernandez.
What's funny is that like I have like a very new audience, Tommy, having done the YouTube stuff. So some of them are just tuning in and hearing your voice for the first time, and they're like, "Who the hell is Tommy Alexander? And why is he already saying goodbye?" No, but to Tommy's point, no, we've been doing this since 2015 October, I want to say, because I reached out to you when I was transitioning from my job at Fox to DreamWorks, and I was like on well, we had been talking on a thread about Lakers stuff in general for like a while, and then that's when I knew like, oh, I kind of, maybe there's like a better outlet for this. And I think maybe the one thing that's come out of this, in spite of like, you know, how much discussions we've had, how much work I've had to do behind the scenes, et cetera, is just like, I think it's made us saner basketball fans, even though it's made us also more maniacal, because we have had this outlet to sort of toss ideas back and forth. I feel like because I'm able to bounce like ideas off of you first, my takes are not as ridiculous when I go out to the public with them, which is great. But yeah, no, the Lakers Legacy would not exist without Tommy, because we started this thing together. I do all the editing and all that junk, but like, you were a very necessary buffer and soundboard to bounce stuff off of that. I feel like, yeah, it's led to us, like, you know, talking to like NBA players or talking to like scouts and all this stuff, which has been really cool. And I think in general, just kind of helping us be a little bit more nuanced in our analysis of the game and how we talk about this stuff, so that we are not one of those people, Tommy, who are like, wait, why don't we just give the $5 million to Precious Achua? You know, Rob's so lucky. I don't know why I'm using that voice. But anyways, it's been it's been a pleasure to do this with you for like a decade or so. It's crazy that it has been a decade. We got one championship out of it during the pandemic, so we were able to podcast about that.
That was fantastic.
Well, which is great. So that makes it all worth it. But yeah, thank you for being on the Lakers Legacy podcast. If we get Giannis, I'm forcing you back on here no matter what. But first, but for now, this is goodbye to Tom. He'll be here for one more episode, by the way. I just want to make that clear. This is like the penultimate episode to gear fans up. But yeah, officially, Tommy moving forward will not be here on a consistent level. But if Giannis comes, you're coming on. I'm forcing you to. Yeah. But yeah, with that said, thank you for listening to the Lakers Legacy podcast. This has been Tommy's penultimate show, and we'll get to have Tommy back for one actual game. It'll be a preseason game, but we'll get Tommy's analysis on actual Lakers basketball for this season before he rides out into the sunset and LeBron Jameses us all. But yeah, Thank you guys for listening. Make sure to like this video, comment down below, subscribe. If you're listening to this on podcast, subscribe on all the podcast platforms. And with that said, we will catch you guys next time. Make sure you're there for Tommy's last episode. Maybe we'll live stream it. Maybe not, because the connection is so bad that like people are going to be here like, where did Tommy go? Yeah, but Tommy, with that said, I'll catch you next time for the last time.
Peace.
See ya.